Kentucky's freshmen are very intriguing ahead of the 2024 NBA draft. And with the college season starting, this is Floor and Ceiling, let's break them down. Rob Dillingham is the Kentucky freshman that has made the most waves early on in the college season. Dillingham is a 5-star recruit who we previously looked at on the channel all the way back when he played for Donda Academy. After that program's closure, Dillingham joined Overtime Elite, and he has always been a very polarizing guard prospect. Throughout all of his high school career, Rob was a super shifty player, a bucket getter, but one whose game was very individualistic and almost straight out of a mixtape. Dillingham could jack up shots early in the shot clock, completely out of rhythm, get lost in his own sauce as a ball handler, and there were very real and logical questions about how he could affect winning at the college level. But so far, the signs at Kentucky have been pretty encouraging. Dillingham had an up and down preseason tour as part of the Global Jam tournament in Canada, but since joining the Wildcats for his first year this summer, his frame has really improved, and so has his feel. We got a great sense of this when Kentucky faced Kansas in their biggest game earlier this week. Dillingham finished with 18 points, 3 assists, and 2 steals in just 16 minutes. And really, there's a case to be made that he should have been on the floor for much longer. Dillingham was effective on and off the ball, and he injected Kentucky with much needed energy and self-creation. Rob was also a willing playmaker. He's great at using his speed and change of pace to create advantages, so he's a constant threat when it comes to getting paint touches. Like I mentioned, Dillingham finished with 3 assists, but he could have had more. All of this speaks to the good job that John Calipari and his staff have done at getting Dillingham to buy in at Kentucky. Not only does he look like a better facilitator now, but his effort when he's not scoring looks much improved. Dillingham is sharing the rock, and he's competing on defense, even though he is usually too small and too skinny to rack up plays on this end. Looking ahead, I'm curious to see how often Dillingham reverts to his ISO hero ball tendencies. This can still happen, and it is more understandable when the offense breaks down late in the shot clock, but when no one else has gotten a touch, and the possession hasn't really even started, it can be inexcusable shot selection. Another really pleasant surprise to start this season has been Sheppard. Shepard, a Kentucky native whose parents both played basketball at Kentucky, is someone who I scouted late last season in person at McDonald's All-American Week. I liked what I saw then from Shepard as a defender and as a floor spacer, but I was unsure about how those instincts would translate over to the college game. After all, and this happens on both sides of the ball, he can be somewhat limited as an athlete. But so far, Shepard is really putting my concerns at ease. For starters, he's been tremendous on defense, Kentucky's best defender through the team's first games. Shepard picks up attackers at the point of attack, and although he guards with a slightly upright posture, he has quick hands and incredible toughness. Reed might not necessarily beat someone in a foot race, but he always understands where to be, and he has a knack for making clutch defensive plays. This is reflected in his first 4 games, where Shepard has 12 steals and 6 blocks. Those are some wildly impressive numbers on the defensive end, but then he can also space the floor going the other way. Shepard won't stay at his current 71% mark from 3, but he profiles legitimately as a very good outside shooter with range. Given that Dillingham and also DJ Wagner are on this team, I suspected that Shepard's shot diet would lean more towards spot-ups. That has mostly been the case, and Reed has been smart playing off of Kentucky's other ball handlers, but make no mistake, the 19-year-old can also create his own shot from deep. He does so while keeping things simple, and early on in the year, he has been so good that it's going to be hard for Kentucky to limit his minutes and role on the floor. Ahead of the rest of the season, I'm hoping that the Kentucky guard gets more run. Shepard has only played about 57% of the minutes available to him, and he deserves more. Plus, that way I'll be able to get a better gauge on what his self-creation and rim finishing look like, since we still need to see more in those areas. In preseason, I had Justin Edwards as a potential top 5 pick in the 2024 NBA draft, but his freshman year is off to a rocky start. It's still early, so there's nothing to be overly concerned about so far, but as I mentioned in my first mock draft video, Edwards' swing skill is likely going to be his three-pointer. So far, Edwards has only made 2 of his 14 attempted triples, and it seems like Kentucky really wants him to take those shots. Broadly, I think his form is fine, but I'm not convinced at all yet by his versatility, and obviously by his percentages. I've always considered Edwards to be much better as a spot-up shooter than anything else from range, and at previous levels, he looked far more comfortable to me in transition, using his athleticism, or pulling up closer to the basket. He's been solid in those respects until now, although not spectacular, and one could argue that all of this shows Edwards' potential as a 3-level scorer down the line, but for that to happen, his outside shooting has to come around, or otherwise, lanes will close off for him. This is also where Edwards' ball handling comes in, which is also an improvement point for the Kentucky freshman. Edwards can handle the ball, but largely in a straight line. He's very reliant on size and athleticism more so than shake. That worked for him until college, but he might be facing more issues now. The 19-year-old, who will turn 20 in about a month, is not finding it that easy anymore to beat defenders off the bounce. However, I don't think this is an athleticism problem. Edwards has been useful rebounding and defending, but rather his ball handling still needs adjustments. Like with his shot, Edwards is extremely left-handed, and he wants to go that way almost every single time. In turn, that makes him predictable. And then, he must do a better job at getting lower to the ground and changing directions more often. At this point, his handle is insecure, and given Edwards' athletic and scoring tools, he makes it far too easy for defenders to keep him in front. I'm high on DJ Wagner. He's inside the top 10 on my big board right now, but in such a wide open draft, the adjustment curve for him in college is gonna have to come quick. In Kentucky's first 4 games, Wagner has been the least efficient Wildcats player, with a very low 37 true shooting percentage. It all starts with Wagner's jumper, which was a question mark headed into the year. I was a little preoccupied with Wagner's 3 since I thought he was better from the mid-range in high school, and so far as a freshman, he has only made 4 of his 17 outside shots. Now, as with everything else in this video, that is a tiny sample size, but ideally, Wagner has to end the year shooting at least in the low 30s for me to not be that worried. I think DJ does a good job at creating separation, and we've seen before that he can operate as a spot-up shooter as well, so what he really has to do is make sure that he's taking his time and that these shots go in. Too often, it seems like his misses go off the rim too hard right now. However, it's from the mid-range where I've been more surprised up until now. Again, we're dealing with just 4 games, but Wagner has missed all 10 of his 2-point pull-ups. This is really tanking his efficiency. It has to improve, because part of what makes Wagner so dangerous is how he can accelerate downhill, stop on a dime, and rise into his jumper. The numbers so far clearly do not look good on paper, but I do think Wagner's process has been mostly solid. Getting closer to the basket, this is where Wagner has been at his most aggressive. He's taken 20 shots at the rim so far this season, creating nearly all of those looks for himself. Wagner is lightning quick, and like I said about Rob Dillingham, he can rack up paint touches and threaten defenses that way. So far as a freshman, the scouting report is similar to what it was in high school. Wagner knows how to go both ways and he can finish with both hands, but he's mostly a below-the-rim finisher. His takeoff point can be too distant, and his scoop layups are there to be blocked by big and long defenders. Then, looking at DJ beyond his scoring, I've been encouraged by his defense and playmaking. Even without a true center on the floor so far, DJ is doing well to blend his scoring and passing, and he's avoiding turnovers pretty well. On defense, Wagner annoys ball handlers and he competes well. This had always been the case, but now that he's put on more muscle, it's not as easy for other guards to shrug him off or drive past him. But given that Wagner's appeal as a prospect largely comes on offense, I'll be closely tracking his shooting numbers this draft cycle and hoping for real improvement as the season goes on.